Hey everybody, it's a hot day in the shop here on a Sunday and just trying to do some, work on some of the details, get some of the things hammered out for the Pikes Peak car. Since I posted some of the videos on the technical side of this, I haven't gotten too much interest, and basically I'm just doing it for you guys. So it's, basically I want to show you what I got going on. I'm going to basically fast forward a year, and I have a year's worth of content built up. I'm sure some of you guys would like that. So if you'd want to see that, just let me know, and I'll put together a video. But as far as things go now, I'm just going to show you the car as it sits now, and I'll bring you along for the journey moving forward. So basically we're at the 80-90% mark as far as the progress on the car. Once the car gets started, once we can start the car and start driving it under its own power, then we're to start testing it, and I want to bring you guys through all of that. And then once we start racing it with the Pennsylvania Hill Climb Association, then we are going to be filming all of that and give you guys all the nitty-gritty on how all that goes. So without further ado, I'm going to do a quick walk around on the car and show you what we got going on. Okay, here is the car as it sits. Most of the front end is ready to go. I have new radius rods in the mail. They should be here soon. Basically what those are going to be are just a larger diameter version of the same thing. Same size Heims. We're going to switch over to steel Heims, but same size and everything like that, so we don't have to change any of the mounts or anything. The front end is basically built. Got to replace this. It's just on there just to, make things look good and whatever. But anyway, got the Panhard bar on order. This Panhard bar has been stretched as far as we can go. Basically, the longer the Panhard bar, the slower the suspension moves, if that makes any sense to some of you. But basically, it will mitigate the effect that a Panhard bar has, which is when the chassis separates from the axle, it pushes the axle one way or the other. So if it's going up, it pulls it this way. If it's going down, it's pushing it that way. By having a longer one of those, it slows all of that down, and it makes the effect a lot less prevalent. So anyway, moving on to the next thing. So the radiator here, you can see it's got a fan on it. It's mostly wired up. Got to put some loom around this stuff. And then that should be wrapped up. Working on some of the plumbing for it. I have all the stuff, all the aluminum piping cut for that. I just have to put some beads on it so that they don't fly off under pressure. The top part, I have started on that, but I think down here we're going to delete this neck here and then put two -16 or -12. These are -12, so I'll probably go 2 -12 ORB fittings, and those will flow from here to each side of the water inlets for the engine. So we have an electric water pump. It's a 35-gallon per hour. What an electric water pump does for us, as opposed to a traditional sprint car's mechanical water pump, is it allows us to not only cool the car while it's off, but it also maintains a consistent amount of water flow throughout the entire run. A mechanical water pump is basically, it runs based on the RPM of the engine. This, being electric, being independent of the engine, will produce the same amount, 35 gallons per hour, or per minute rather. And so it'll pretty much be the best cooling that I can have all of the time. Another thing here, you'll see the power steering looks a little different than a traditional sprint car. It's actually a late model and dirt modified power steering pump. So that's from Jones Racing, not Joe's. Yes, I actually called the wrong people, and they said they get it all the time. But anyway, so this is Jones Racing Products pulley. It's the biggest one they offer. I called them to see what they would recommend if I ran the stock balancer, which is 7 inches and change. And then this is a 7, which is the biggest they make. He said I would he would recommend going bigger if they had one, but they don't. And he said this one would be great for the application that we have. GME Steering up in New Ringgold, PA, they were the ones to help me spec out the pump since they did the steering box, and they rebuilt that and revalved it for this application. But anyway, this pump is a different style pump than a traditional sprint car pump, and it works better at lower RPM, which we're going to see a lot more of than a sprint car because they are basically flat out all the time. So this is going to be a little bit different. You can see also I have the water pump is wired up. I'm not going to keep this here permanently. I'm just kind of situating it for now. Anyway, I also have that tied into the motor mount here, and then these will go on here for the ground, but I just got to put new eyelets on there. Not a big deal. Details, details, details. The engine is completely built internally. I do not think that I need much else as far as that goes to run. I have all the sensors. Pretty much everything has been wired. I had to redo some of the wiring on the injection harness because they have different ends for the injection connector or the injector connectors. So I have those on there for now. If I go to a different style injector, then I can lop these ones off and put the other style on, since I have plenty of slack down there. Anyway, came out all right looking. I'm going to loom it so it won't look so ugly. The intake is what they call the Trailblazer SS intake. It actually came on quite a bit of different vehicles besides the Trailblazer, but that's what they call it, the Trailblazer SS. This one I shaved down. You can see I cut off some of the mounts and smoothed them out. This I basically capped off by plastic welding the top on, so on and so forth. Some guys shave these down where they have no ribbing at all, but since we are eventually going to be putting a turbo on this car, it is actually best to leave all this on here for when you put boost to it, it's actually a little bit stronger. So left most of that on there, deleted all the ugly stuff that I didn't need, and kept the stuff that obviously I do need. Capped some stuff off here, like this is capped off, stuff like that. The engine's got a nice big cam in it. The heads have been gone through, but they haven't been ported or anything. The engine as it sits right now should probably make in the neighborhood of 400 horsepower, 4 to 5 maybe. And eventually when we get to Pikes Peak, it should be anywhere from 800 to 1,000 horsepower. That is needed for the altitude. We start at 9,000 feet and end at 14,114, I think it is. Anyway, moving on. So I have a 7-inch it's a 7-inch clutch in there. It's basically a multi-purpose clutch, but it's a racing clutch, and it's you can disassemble it and maintain it pretty easily. But they use them on late models. They use them on road race cars and so on and so forth. And since we have a late model transmission, dirt late model transmission with an external clutch, I think it was perfect for this application. The reason why we went with this transmission was basically it is it's 2 speeds, but it's a small package. It was cheap. It was under $2,000, brand new, and it could take a beating. The traditional late model transmissions that have the internal clutch, you cannot downshift those, or else you will blow them all to pieces. So basically what we did with this one is spec'd it out with Bobby over at Winters Performance, and we came up with a good solution for this application. Now, you can see here, I had to get kind of creative for the gear shifts. This is for forward and reverse, and I had to make this part. They do make shifters for this, obviously, that bolt right onto here, and they also make cable shifters, but neither one of those applications would have worked for what we're trying to do here. So basically what I have done, now this isn't going to mount here, but this will be my shifter, and then I have a old Harley panhead master cylinder, which is a 3/4 master cylinder. Basically, that is my clutch. I will take off on that, but I don't need it for the 1-2 shift or downshifting. It's just basically to take off and come to a stop. So that is bled. That is ready to go. It is a bit heavy. I mean, I'm going to be honest. I have pretty big forearms, though, so I think I can handle it, and I think we'll be fine. The recommendation from the manufacturer for the throwout bearing was 3/4 master cylinder, and that's the reason why I went with that setup there. Anyway, moving on to the brakes. They're pretty similar to a traditional sprint car, except for the fact that I have 2 master cylinders. I have one for the rear brakes, one for the front. Now, the reason why we do that for this road racing application is because basically twofold. The first one is if I lose my front brakes, I have rear brakes. If I lose my rear brakes, I have front brakes. They're totally independent systems, and they will work despite the other one not working. The other thing is this right here. So basically, I spin this knob left or right, and that basically adjusts my brake bias. So the more I turn it this way, the more it leans that way, and then this one will engage first, which is what I want because that's the front master cylinder, and then this one will subsequently come a little bit after, and the more I adjust this will adjust how long after this one engages that this one will engage. The master cylinders for these the lines will come out of here, and they will likely mount on the firewall, which will go basically right here. The steering, like I said before, was built by GME in New Ringgold, Pennsylvania. Those guys are incredible. I gave them basically a hunk of junk. It's been my steering for a long, long time. Always worked really well, but it had been some time since it's been rebuilt. Now I get it back, and it looks like a completely different unit. They painted this with like a high temp coating. They either took mine off and turned this down to save weight, or they put their new version of this collar on here. But either way, looks tremendous. Then they polished pretty much everything that could be polished. It looks incredible. They revalved it and all that stuff. So they took my old tired steering and revamped it, and they gave me a great price to do it. They were super amped up about the project, and so hopefully, we get to show those guys what we have up in store for them. So anyway, once we get this rear suspension situation finished, I'll show you. Skip over here real quick. Basically, this is what we got going on with the rear suspension. We have basically, these are dirt late model bird cages that were cut in half, and then tabs were made for these. And the only thing we're waiting on right now is another one of these collars that was cut down so that we can move this further this way. The further this way we can go, the better. But anyway, so that's what's going on with that. Kind of waiting on some rear end stuff until that happens. I do have radius rods coming in for here. And once we get that situated in the rear, then we can measure for the drive shaft. And basically that will go from there to there. There you go. Anyway, it's going to be a short drive shaft, but it's not too short. It's definitely stuff that people have worked with, before. So I don't think I'll have too many issues with that. It's going to be a little bit different drive shaft than a traditional sprint car. Traditional sprint cars have what they call a torque tube. And the torque tube is fixed mounted to the rear end. And then it's got a torque ball, which basically is like a pivot point. And inside of that is your universal for your drive shaft. This will have 2 universals, one here and then one on the yoke in the front of the rear end, right up there. So The other thing is I'm probably going to end up using dirt modified drive shaft loops. So I guess the first one will probably mount somewhere in here, and then another one a little bit further back. And so I'll have to put bars in to mount those basically here and back there, which is okay because the more stiffness there is, the better for the chassis. Like, we've added these as a requirement from the SCCA. You know, that I've gone to the tech inspectors and asked them what they would like to see, and this is one of the things. So the other things are basically, you know, anything that tightens up the chassis, like adding bars down there is going to tighten up the chassis. All of that is going to have an effect. But the good thing is that we're starting from scratch. We don't know what's going to hurt. We don't know what's going to help. But we're going to basically have to start somewhere and go off of that. All right, moving on. Got the fuel cell in. As you can see here, it's just literally sitting on there, kind of mocked up. I'm going to be making mounts for it. And then once that's mounted up, I'm also going to make a plate for here to mount our intake electric fuel pump. That will be pumped out that way, and so on and so forth. But no, it doesn't look like a traditional sprint car, does it? Or will it? So anyway, this will have the inside, or the bottom side of it cut out, and this fits perfectly inside of it. So this will be covered up by a traditional sprint car fuel cell cover. Some other things I wanted to show you guys was the the control panel here. I also built this battery box, which is mounted to the frame. I think you can see the mounts under there. So these are mounted to the frame, and then I had some scraps that I made all this up with, and I think it came out pretty nice. Anyway, that runs to the Ford style starter solenoid down here. Basically, that's about as simple as it comes as far as operating a starter. They do go bad, but they're very simple to operate and very simple to install and cheap. Anyway, this is the Holley ECU, Holley HP ECU. It's a little bit different than the Terminator X. It's a little bit more capable. It's basically a Holley Dominator system with less ports built into it, which are, you know, allows people to monitor different things, stuff that I won't need really, not now. But anyway, so that's in there mounted. The wiring harness is going to come under the seat and then plug right into the bottom here. And then these wires for the battery are going to go to the shut-off switch, which I think will be up in this area. We will eventually be running a wing slider. More on that later. But the shut-off switch should go like right up here. Going to need one of those since we're running an electric fuel pump, and it's a requirement. So anyway, so that was the last of the cool things that I had to show you. Motor plates, custom motor plate. An LS engine is an inch and a half shorter than a regular small block Chevy. So all I had to do is have our buddies over at Triple J Specialties make us up a set of motor plate spacers, and then we cut the inside out of a regular motor plate to the same diameter that the bell housing is. I think that's it, everybody. I think you're up to speed now. All right, I'll talk to you later.